Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's roughly 5 o'clock. Let's start with roll call. Commissioners present. I am Don Griffin, Chair.
Cindy Canarney here.
Nick Kappas here.
Eric Sandweiss.
David Walter.
Okay, staff present.
Doris Sims, Hand Director.
Christina Finley, Hand Department.
Jeff Underwood, Controller Treasurer.
Philippa Guthrie, Corporation Counsel.
Mick Reneisen, Deputy Mayor.
Brent Pierce, Hand.
Larry Allen, Legal.
Matt Sweeney, Hand.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Any other present? No, we're fine. Let's start with the reading of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for? Wait a minute. Sorry, I think I've got the wrong minutes here. Pardon me, guys. Let's see. I have here. I've got the minutes for November 16th. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That was our last meeting.
Okay. All right. Good to go then, guys. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for November 16th, 2020?
So moved. This is Eric Sandweiss.
I'll second that, David Walter.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed. The motion carries. Examination of claims. Is there a motion to approve the claims register for November the 25th, 2020?
This is David Walter. I make a motion to accept the claims.
Cindy Canarney seconds.
All in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed. The motion does carry. Examination of payroll registers. Is there a motion to approve the payroll registers for November the 20th, 2020?
Cindy Canarney moves approval.
Eric Sandweiss seconds.
All in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed. The motion does carry. Let's have a report of officers and committees. Is there a director's report?
No, I don't have anything to report tonight. I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a legal report?
I just note that prior to this meeting at 4:15, the RDC met in executive session pursuant to Indiana Code 514 1.5 6.1 to discuss real property transactions. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions commissioners may have.
Okay. Is there a treasurer's report?
There is not, but I'm happy to answer questions, and I'll cede my time to the long agenda.
Okay. Is there a CTP update report?
None tonight. I will also cede the time.
Fantastic. Thank you, folks. Thanks for your reports, or lack of, but you know what I'm saying. Thank you for your time. Let's see. We've got some old business / new business. Resolution 20-84, approval of the funding agreement for the Life Designs. Who would like to speak in regards to Resolution 20-84?
Matt Sweeney here. We actually sent out some questions and answers beforehand. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look through those. Does anybody have any questions regarding what we sent out?
And this is in regards to the water tanks, right? The
tankless water heaters.
Tankless water heaters. Yep.
So if you recall from last meeting, the commission wanted to table this to find out some additional information, particularly why the organization was looking at tankless water heaters versus tank water heaters, for better terminology. And so a questionnaire was sent to the organization to address a couple of questions that came out of the last meeting. And that was sent out to all the commissioners in advance. So do you have any additional questions regarding their proposal to change their activity to tankless water heaters from a rehab activity?
This is David Walter. I read through that and it all looked fairly reasonable to me. So I don't have any issues with going to tankless hot water heaters.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either. Any other commissioners have any questions in regards to Resolution 20-84? And if not, I'm going to go ahead and, go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
No, I thought it looked good too.
Okay.
We should go ahead.
I'm gonna ask the public if they have any questions in regards to Resolution 20-84. Okay.
Well, I'm not a member of the public, if I may, Don. I would just ask Matt if you could make sure that we have that question and answer so that we can include those in the minutes of these meetings to make it public for the next meeting. That would be great.
Fantastic.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Okay, do we have a motion?
This is David Walter. I'd like to make a motion we accept Resolution 20-84.
This is Eric Sandweiss. I second the motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canardi, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
All opposed? None. So the motion does carry. Next, we go on to new business. Let's start with Resolution 20-89, approval of project review and approval form regarding financial analysis and redevelopment strategy for the IU Health Bloomington Hospital site at 2nd and Rogers. We've got several folks that are going to speak in regards to this, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That is correct. Thank you, President Griffin. This is Mick Reneisen, Deputy Mayor. There will be others jump on here really quickly. I just wanted to preface this agenda item with the background of the RDC is aware that we've been negotiating with a particular owner's representative for the better part of 18 months. That was Browning Development from Indianapolis. During those negotiations, getting close to the conclusion, where we actually had to sign an agreement that would bind us together for, 10 or 15 years. We both kind of recognized that the approach that the owner's representative wanted to take and the approach the city wanted to take were merging in two different directions. To use a simpler analogy, we had been dating for about 18 months and we decided to see other people. It just wasn't working out, and we've separated amicably, but recognized that neither one of us could come to a conclusion with an agreement that we could both walk away with feeling like it was the right agreement for both entities. So when that occurred, we recognized we still had a void in the services we needed moving forward to advance the project in a way that we would be able to give you all the information you need as we bring forth in future years a financial request to redevelop the site. So with that in mind, we had been working through our arrangement with the Skidmore, Owings and Merrill Group. They had subcontracted with SB Friedman. Two partners there are involved in the proposal and have been working on the project. Ronadip Bose and Lance Dorner on the call. And we have a proposal that we think advances the project forward and gives us what the city needs at this moment in time and for the short term and maybe even for a longer term for those services, those being financial analysis and a redevelopment strategy. So that's the background. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and Jeff Underwood's going to give you a bit more background, and then you're welcome to ask any questions about the proposal with Ronadip or Lance, who are here representing SB Friedman. Jeffrey?
Yes, thank you. Again, would like to reiterate for these first three items, we are presenting only tonight to the commission. We're not asking for approval. Obviously, if you all are comfortable with it, you can elect to do that. But really tonight is to present the information and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions during the meeting. And then if you have any follow-up questions. As Mick said, Lance and Randeep are here as well to answer questions. So as we took a look at this, we kind of broke this down into components of services we thought we needed. And the first thing that we thought that we would need is this financial analysis and strategy. And SB Friedman sent us a proposal. We reviewed that, and we felt like some of the items would be provided by our current financial advisor, Reedy Associates out of Seymour, as far as some of the bonding capacities and things like that in regards to the TIF areas. So this proposal has SB Friedman providing those services that we will not be getting from our financial advisors. However, they will work with them to produce the end result. So you see the scope of services that they are proposing. And which is the estimate to stabilize assess values, prepare multi-year cash flow analysis, outline conveyance and partnership options, and prepare a briefing book and discuss, and then the allowances for client calls and coordination with the financial advisors and city staff. And then once that's completed, we will make a presentation back to the RDC. Obviously, one of the things that we as staff and you all are interested in is returning some of these properties to the tax rolls. That way, that increment comes back to the RDC, and we would recoup some of the investment that we're going to be making and have made in this area. So with that, I will be happy. The amount of the contract would be $38,760 in fees, and then an allowance of $650 for reimbursable expenses, for a total of $39,410. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Lance and Randy are here as well to answer anything you might have.
I would like to ask a question of Mick or Jeff or whoever would like to answer it. Just if you wouldn't mind rehearsing just a little bit of what we passed over pretty quickly at the outset. Can you summarize in any way that doesn't violate any particular privacy issues, the kind of the kernel of the separation or the disagreement with the previous contractor that leads us to consider this item tonight?
Sure, I'll start, and Alex and Jeff and Filippo have all been involved in the discussions with Browning as well. So if they feel like they want to add anything, I'll let you all do that. Essentially, there were numerous ways for the compensation package to Browning to be exercised in future years. And it was contingent upon, first, the opportunity for Browning to be a developer on the site and to secure some percentage of acres for them to build on the site. Not unusual for an owner's rep. Second, then percentages of fees related to bringing another potential developer onto some of the other acres that the site presented itself in the form of affordable housing or multifamily or retail. And we recognize that Browning had a really strong skill set in one aspect of that, mostly the office space part that they would likely develop themselves, but didn't have as strong of a connection to some of the other really important aspects of the project from a community standpoint, from an administration standpoint. And the fee structure was a little wonky for us. That's a real technical term that made it difficult for us to get our heads wrapped around exactly what were we signing on for with somebody for a decade or more. So it again, it wasn't just a one-sided rejection of the other's approach. It was kind of a mutual, we just don't see a way that this is going to work going forward. And they just didn't want to do damage to their reputation in Bloomington. They want to do work here, and they felt like it was best for them to admit that this was not a situation that was working. So any of the others of the team want to add to that, feel free to do so.
I'll just add that, I mean, Browning is a very, very strong developer, and we do expect them to have a role in the hospital site. We're pleased about their interest. And so, you know, we were sensitive to some of these challenges that Mick was laying out. And we feel that, you know, where this has ended up is a good place. And obviously, you know, they don't have the monopoly on what kinds of services we would like to find in the marketplace, which include this financial analysis that we're talking about tonight, but also reaching out to other developers. So we feel like this ended up in a place that was probably the right place.
Okay, moving right along, I'm looking at the contract we have before us. It looks like the main items here are to conduct residual land value analysis by land use and estimate stabilized assessed value. Would you like to speak a little bit about what all is involved in there, seeing how that's about half the contract?
Lance, if you and your team would like to take that.
Sure. Lance, go ahead. We were just figuring out who among us is responding, but I think Lance is ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was having an issue with my mute button. Well, we appreciate you all having us here tonight. So I'm happy to talk through the scope of services that we proposed here a bit. Ultimately, what we're proposing is to put together a financial model that will inform the disposition strategy and the implementation strategy as part of the planning effort. So the SOM contract is going to present you with a very nice plan, some initial preliminary implementation steps, but this financial analysis is really going to inform how exactly can we move forward. So there are a few different aspects of the analysis. The first is to get a sense of all the different land uses that we're proposing on the site and that the community is in support of and that are market feasible. How much land sale proceeds could be generated by developing those individual uses. So residual land value analysis is essentially considering the construction costs and the operating assumptions associated with the different land uses. So if we are proposing a multifamily project on a specific site relative to an office project, relative to something else, the amount of money that a developer is able to pay for that parcel, given the economics of the deal varies. So the residual land analysis will tell us how much we think we could generate from land sale proceeds by the individual land uses. The second portion of that, and that's something that we'll work with the financial advisor for, is to get a sense of, to get a sense of the amount of TIF increment that could be generated by redevelopment. So we're looking at two different ways in which the project will be generating revenue. And then on the flip side, there's a long laundry list of costs associated with redevelopment. So you're going to have to build out the infrastructure. There's other public policy goals that the city has in mind as they're considering redevelopment of the site. And how can we pay for those specific costs given what we think we can generate in terms of land sales and what we can generate in terms of increment. So this analysis is essentially going to draw together all of this information into a multi-year cash flow analysis that's going to allow us to think about different strategies for development of the site, maybe thinking about different density, different use mix, that sort of thing. It's going to help us think through specific phasing. Which blocks should we bring to market first? Which blocks is more of the infrastructure in place, and so there's less of a heavy lift in terms of pulling together the revenues or the amount of money that's needed to make those sites developable. And through this analysis, we're going to essentially come up with a path forward, and this will inform essentially which portions of the project we should bring to market when, what the preferred uses might be. And then we also have a step that's focused on, okay, now how do we bring this to market? What are the potential conveyance options? What are the partnership options that we can ensure that this project is going to be implemented? If Ranadeep, if you have anything more to add to that, please feel free.
No, that's a great summary. I think the one point, like also just as an illustration, how land value can vary. Obviously, sites where the density is higher and you have entitlements for more units, in general, will have a greater value than, let's say, other sites which have less units as entitlements. And so we do have a very diverse mix and product of housing and different uses that are on the site. And so that variation of product, which makes this interesting as an urban redevelopment, and the variation in uses has different bearings on land value, which is what that residual land value model will estimate. So I think that's one of the key elements, because your two sources of funds, as Lance mentioned, is revenue from land sales and tax revenue, or either a TIF or that is generated from the site. And so those two sources should cover all the other public costs that you could have. And that's the whole idea of this entire assessment, a financial model from the city's perspective to make sure that it's a financially feasible. I mean, you've got a great plan, which is market feasible. It also needs to be financially feasible. That's what this whole assignment or the whole analysis is meant to do.
So can someone speak to the timeline of when we would start this engagement? And looking just at the additional services that would fall under this engagement, it seems like it would span longer than 60 days, which is kind of identified here.
Sure. So the 60-day timeline is really for that core scope of services. So to get us to the point where there's a presentation of you all relative to the financial model and the potential conveyance and partnership options. The additional services essentially outline all the different paths that could potentially come into play once we get to the point of having a definitive view on what our implementation steps are going to be. So ultimately, this is going to be we're saying maybe up to a 10-year build out for this site specifically. And these uses, or these different additional services, are things that we could do on behalf of the Redevelopment Commission in the city as part of next steps. So there's services that could include working to identify potential developers, maybe doing a RFQP process, direct outreach, reviewing qualifications, structuring deals. That's all within our wheelhouse, and it's hard to put a box around that in terms of what the timeline can be, because it's really, I guess, it's really based on the amount of what the path forward we want to take, and then the sort of market activity and the amount of development activity that could potentially be produced on the site. So it's hard to put a box in terms of timeline on those additional services. The 60 days is really just for the financial analysis and the implementation strategy.
And if I could, I would just add that this is in contrast to the way we were approaching it with Browning, which was a one-size-fits-all 10-year relationship we were trying to define all in one fell swoop. This is more of a piecemeal. Let's start with what we know is first in the series of things that might be needed, and then let's see how that goes and progress to the next one, instead of trying to understand and wrap 10 years worth of potential service relationships into one package. And I think that's part of the learning experience all of us had as we went through the negotiating process with Browning. Again, no fault of theirs, just a mutual understanding that we were trying to figure out something that was very difficult to get our heads wrapped around on both sides. With SB Friedman, we know the next step. We've got a proposal, and we know we may need their services beyond that, but we'll bring those to you in pieces as we understand where we are after the first step. So I hope that makes sense too.
So when would the first 60 days start, you think?
Upon approval from you all, I think we'd like to we'll have the master plan that you'll get from SOM December 21st at your next meeting. And so sometime after that, upon your approval, we would initiate this step. So we would have arguably by the end of February of 2021, that first stage could be done. Lance and Ranadeep, tell me if I'm misinterpreting that. That's subject to your availability, but I think that was our intent.
That's correct. That's exactly right, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from any redevelopment commissioners? We're not going to vote on this today, so I'm not sure this resolution requires public input. Attorneys, what do you think?
We would vote on it just as an acceptance of the project review form if you want to move forward with it.
Okay. Okay.
So as a reminder, the vote on the project review form just approves the funding.
Mm-hmm.
And then next week would be a vote on the contract itself, which would authorize us to spend those funds.
Okay. Let me ask them, then let me ask the public if they have any questions in regards to resolution 20-89. All right. No questions from the public. Any more questions from commissioners? And if not, do we have a motion?
I move approval of 20-89. Cindy Canarney.
I second Cindy's motion. This is Eric Sandweiss.
All those in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
Motion is approved. There is no opposition. Motion does carry. The next item of business is resolution 20-90, approval of project review and approval form regarding project management for the IU hospital site at 2nd and Rogers Street.
Good evening, Jeff Underwood. I'll present this one as well. As you know, Kelly Boatman has been giving us excellent project management services on the hospital project. And for some unknown reason, we believe maybe she got a bump on the head. She's decided to leave us without our permission and move back to Michigan. Again, we're questioning her thought process there, so we think it must be a bump on the head. But anyway, Kelly will be leaving us at the end of the month, so we have a void to fill. So in order to make it easy for Mick and I and Larry and Alex, we're going from core management to core project or core planning strategy, so we keep the same name. No, the real reason is you're very aware of core and the work they've done for us on the garages. Deb Kuntz and Josh Sissom, who's with us on the call tonight. They've done an excellent job. They were a part of the SOM team as well. So Josh is very much up to date on this project. And we feel that there'll be a very easy move over to them to provide us these management services, beginning they would get with Kelly yet this month to transition, and then the contract would carry us through the end of next year. The amount of the contract is $112,342 plus a $5,000 allowance for reimbursable expenses. As I said, Josh is on the call, and we're very confident that they will fill this role as a great representative of the city and the RDC. So we would ask for your approval of the resolution, and then in 2 weeks, the contract for core planning strategies. And Josh is here as well and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hey, Josh.
Hi, Don.
Any questions for Josh, folks?
So just a quick question. So this would take us through December of 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then we'd reevaluate if we needed to engage further?
Yes.
Thank
And the
you.
role, and the role, it'll give us an opportunity to also talk about what role they would play as the site develops. So there may be additional activities we'd like them to take on for us. So it gives us a chance to assess where we're at with the project and make any necessary changes. And we would bring that proposal to you in the fall of 2021.
Okay. Any questions from the public in regards to resolution 20-90? Okay. Any more questions from commissioners in regards to this resolution?
This is David Walter. I'll make a motion to accept resolution 20-90.
This is Eric Sandweiss. I will second the motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canardi, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed. The motion does carry. The next, I'm
Before we
sorry.
move on, we would like to thank Kelly. She's going to be with us through this meeting, but we would like to thank her for her great service to the city. She's worked on a number of projects for us. She kept Alex and I in line on the Trades District projects, and it's kept Mick in line on the hospital project. So she's been a valuable member of the team. We've considered her be a part of the city team from the beginning. So heartfelt thanks from me, Kelly, for what you've done. Really appreciate it, and do wish you well in your new ventures up in Michigan.
Yep.
Thank
It's
you,
gonna
Kelly.
it's gonna be cold up there. Just teasing. We'll miss you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's not cold here yet. It seems since I moved here from Indiana, I brought the warm southern weather with me. We haven't had any snow yet.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Let's go to the next item of business. It's resolution 20-91. Recommendation to keep the core administration building on the old IU Health Bloomington Hospital site.
So I'm going to lead off, and we're not going to let Kelly leave us yet. She's going to be a presenter in this. So as I think the Redevelopment Commission members are aware, the agreement that we have with IU Health requires us to provide them a decision on 2 of the assets that we were allowed to consider keeping, or else them removing at their costs when they leave the site on West 2nd Street. We've already come to you and asked for you all to keep, and you did agree with us, the parking structure, and now the core building is the last remaining option we have to keep or ask them to remove. That decision has to be made by the end of this calendar year. After a lot of deliberation, a summary of which Kelly will present now, we'll present to you why we think the recommendation is to keep the building moving forward. So Kelly's going to share her screen and walk you through some of the detail behind our recommendation. And several of us will jump in along the way to share our respective parts of this presentation. Kelly?
Yep. Thank you, Mick. I'm going to run through some slides here, and as Mick said, I'll have some others joining in to help along the way. This initial part here is just bringing you up to speed on all of the information that we have on the core building and that has been part of the facility evaluation along the way. And I should say this was most recently presented to the Hospital Reuse Committee Steering Committee on Friday. So hopefully you all know the core building. It is the 1947 portion of the hospital that was that's there at the corner of First and Rogers. It has 4 stories. That includes the basement level, and it is 23,000 square feet. It sits there at the corner of First and Rogers, sits back from Rogers Street. There's a retaining wall there. As that you'll notice as you drive by. It sits up high above the street. This page is taken from an engineering analysis that was done on the core building, and I include it here just to illustrate that, and this is in plan view, so you're looking down at the floor plans for each of the floors of the core building, and this points out the red line on each of these yellow building out footprints. That red line is where the core building is attached to the main hospital. There is a shared, what we think is a shared wall between the core building and the main hospital. Facility information that has been gathered to date includes, back in 2015, the Hospital Reuse Committee had a subcommittee that looked at the parking garage and the core building and did their own evaluation. And then we had the Urban Land Institute study, the ULI study in 2018. Also in 2018, August Mack did an environmental assessment that looked at lead paint and mold and asbestos and those kinds of things in the building. In 2019, RC Engineers did an engineering feasibility study to look at all aspects of the mechanicals and foundation and roof and so forth. There was a historical assessment done by Ratio Architects in 2019. And then the steering committee, or I'm sorry, the Hospital Reuse Committee toured the facility last summer. We also had some assistance from IU Health looking at probable cost estimates for repair and retrofit of the building if it were to be repurposed. And Chris Cockram from FC Tucker last year also looked at commercial use of the real estate, a marketability study, if it were to be reused as office. And then this year, the new item, piece of information that we have is a developer review of the building for potential adaptive reuse as residential. And so I highlight that at the bottom because that is the new piece of information we have this year. So if the core building is repurposed, it will, of course, when the hospital is demolished, the main building is demolished and the core building remains. There's some immediate things that need to be done to make sure the building can be standalone. And so in conjunction with the demolition of the main hospital site, there's a list here of items: new power service, water service, fire service and fire alarm controls, and then shoring up that area on the northwest wall that adjoins the current main hospital building. Making sure that that wall is reconstructed to protect it from weather. And those short-term costs, which will be in conjunction with the demo of the site, are $600,000 to $750,000. And then any long-term costs that would be incurred to rehab the building would be, the intent there is those long-term costs would be borne by the developer that is the development partner that comes on board to repurpose the building. And I'm going to hand over to Alex to talk about the marketability information and then the developer information that was obtained for reuse of the building.
Hi, everyone. Alex Crowley, Economic Sustainable Development with the city. I'll talk about both a commercial and a residential evaluation that was done, starting with the commercial one. So FC Tucker took a look at this, and I want to underscore the fact that this was done in 2019, meaning that it preceded the pandemic. And the reason why we started with a commercial analysis was frankly because that's what it's being used for right now. So it was basically looking at the marketability as a commercial space, moving forward, office spaces. And you'll see here the yield from that analysis. But I underscore the fact that this was pre-pandemic because for those of you who are tracking the commercial marketplace right now, it has basically bottomed out. So, this is interesting, but it's really perhaps a little bit outdated. More interesting is some work that we've done with this property. Kelly, if you can skip to the next page, where we went out and we asked 3 affordable housing developers that have some link with Bloomington to take a close look at the building. So we issued to all of them all of the information that we had on hand about the building. And the 3 were Strategic Capital Partners out of Indianapolis, Bryn Shore out of Chicago, and Real America out of, I believe they're Indianapolis as well. All 3 have projects that they're looking at and or working on in Bloomington, so they have an understanding of the market. And they took a look at this at arm's length, mind you, at first, to understand what the possibilities were for the building. And you'll see that in the second bullet here, all 3 actually came back and said that this had a potential for adaptive reuse as residential or office, but these are all residential. So they were very much focused on that. One of the 3 came to Bloomington and actually toured the facility, which was encouraging because when they came away from that process, they had a much closer view of the building and understood that their arm's length analysis was actually accurate. So we feel confident that there is a residential adaptive reuse of the building. The fact that it's a historic building actually helps when accumulating points for low-income housing tax credits. So that's interesting to note. And then, having said that, there are certainly going to be some costs as, it's an old building and it has potential uncertainty related to asbestos remediation. So there are going to be some costs associated with it. But we came away from this process feeling optimistic that there was at least value in looking at the building as something that could be reused in the residential space.
I'm going to go ahead and just show a few slides here from the draft final master plan framework, just to give everyone some orientation as to where the core building is in the site redevelopment. And I'll also point out that this plan shows that the core building would have an addition, potentially an addition on the back to increase the square footage for repurposing. And Mick, feel free to jump in if you have things that you want to add about these slides. But this is just to orient everyone. This is looking south west, and north is to the bottom lower corner of your screen towards downtown. And you'll see 2nd Street here running along the north edge of the site, and the Beeline Trail along the east edge of the site. And the core building is right here in the middle, with the green space in front of the core building along Rogers. And this is the existing core building, this T-shaped structure. And then the idea here, the conceptual idea was that there could be an addition on the back to make this building into more of an H or an I-shaped structure.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add here, Kelly, is for the RDC members and the members of the public, you can see the various density scale over here to the left-hand side. The darker the color in purple, the more dense, and you can see the core building with expansion begins to approach and solve for some of those 870 total units of housing that are mentioned in the upper right of the screen. So obviously that site, if it's not the core building, could be something else for housing, maybe more dense, maybe not, but it does get at that 870 total unit count that in its entirety, this area could redevelop into market conditions allowing for that.
And then just to give you another view of the site with the core building, this is a little bit more illustrative with the landscaping added in, showing again, north is towards the lower right corner towards downtown. We're looking southwest across the site. This is Rogers Street where my cursor is going. This is the core building. The white part would be the existing structure, and then the green addition potentially on the back. And this new greenway that's proposed for the site running down here through the middle on the north, just north of the core building. And this just gives you an idea of the massing and also, you know, the additional public realm features added in.
So this conclusion of our recommendation is on this slide, which basically indicates to you some of the parameters we've already discussed. We have to make a decision by December 31st per our agreement with IU Health. We are working on getting demolition estimates so that you have a better sense prior to a decision-making timeframe on December 21st, what it may cost if we were to leave the core building on the site as we recommend, but have to make a choice in future years if the market doesn't do what we hope it would do based on our outreach to those 3 development partners. We would hope in the next 18 months, that's about the time frame before the actual main hospital site will come down. I think we're all aware that IU Health intends to open towards the end of 2021, and then they would start to demolish their site in 2022, and their contract with us requires them to remediate the site after that. So in that parallel track time span of 2021 into early 2022, we would hope to know if there is redevelopment opportunity partner that could take on the rest of the costs of the development. Now there's some risk, of course, in that, and we're trying to ascertain what that risk would be in the form of how much it would cost if it's on the city's dime to demolish the site because we can't find a development partner. IU Health has been working on trying to ascertain that cost, but quite frankly, they've been pretty wrapped up in their new project, and their old existing site is not something they've spent a lot of time working on yet. So we're in the process of soliciting some information that we can share with you on the 21st. We do not have it tonight for you, so we'll hopefully have that by the 21st. If you agree with this recommendation on the 21st, we would pursue historic designation. We know the Historic Preservation Commission is already interested in doing that. They've been patient as we've waited to go through our due diligence steps to make a recommendation to you all first. And then, of course, if we have a development partner, that we would work with them on the LIHTC option to apply for those credits as well. And then if nothing happens to work out in our favor, that's the risk factor here, then in 2022, we may have to make a different recommendation so that the site doesn't sit with decaying infrastructure on it indefinitely after that. So that's a summary of our recommendation. We do have some other slides to share with you real quickly that just talk about next steps. It might give you some context before you ask questions about our recommendation. Kelly, go ahead and go to the next one. So at this stage in the master plan that SOM is working on, the end of public comment was November 29th. The draft of the final report is due later this week from SOM, and then there'll be a closeout meeting on the 15th, which will wrap up the final edits to the master plan report. And then we'll bring that to you on December 21st to accept that final report. And then moving forward, the first thing that we will do will be work with the Plan Commission as they are doing updates to the zoning maps, and our SOM master plan will make some recommendations to the planning staff and ultimately to the Plan Commission, and ultimately then to the City Council on how we think this area of our community should be rezoned. It's obviously all zoned medical as of this time frame. And then the next step after that, Kelly, if you go to the next slide, we believe a lot of 2021 will be spent on looking at the opportunity to develop the western block bordered by Rogers, north of First and west of Morton, or the Beeline Trail, where parcel transfers from IU Health may start to come our way. In fact, one of them has already happened. That's the New Hope properties that have been transferred to the city, and I'll let Philippa Guthrie talk about that here in a moment. We do think that the next logical thing, and we've been having ongoing discussion with Centerstone, is we'll show you a map, and Kelly, if you go ahead and advance to that, we'll show you what the map shows where the ownership of properties is. And this reference slide, if you'll look at what's identified as parcels in the B block, that again being south of 2nd Street, north of First, east of Rogers, and west of Morton, New Hope has been transferred to us. That's that upper right-hand quadrant. The site right below that, that has an arrow dotted line to it, is where the testing site that the Monroe County, City of Bloomington, and IU Health are having for COVID, and that contract runs through June of next year. The B block is a mixture of other IU Health properties, but you can see just to the very southernmost part of this slide where First Street is, there's a little rectangular parcel that would come our way that sits right behind Centerstone. And then Centerstone owns the parcel just to the right of that, where they have a parking lot. And Centerstone's own a little notched out parcel that Kelly will point to right there. So we're trying to aggregate those parcels and make it so Centerstone has a clean and defined block, that a quadrant of this block that they can count on and use to aggregate their needs. And then the city can acquire by trading off some of these properties with Centerstone to make a nice clean block that we can develop. So that's going to be another ongoing project through phases in 2021. And then we also believe that after those parcels start to come our way, we might be able to start working on the infrastructure design in 2021, starting with, again, this same B block that would include where the Greenway Street goes through and where Madison Street is pushed through between 1st and 2nd Street. And you'll see that, I think, on the next slide that we have to show you. If you'll advance to that one, Kelly. Yeah, so there you can see what we hope to do in partnership with Centerstone, aggregate their quarter block. And then you can see Madison Street being pushed through all the way to from 1st to 2nd, and then the Greenway Street running east-west. Hopefully we can design and begin to get that underway maybe as early as 2022 for construction, while we wait for the main hospital block to be demolished and returned to the city in a remediated fashion. So that's just a couple of upcoming steps that we envision. Now, if you'll go back, Kelly, and I'll let Philippa talk about the parcel transfer and the other parcels and how those might come our way. So Philippa.
Hello, everyone. So we closed on 4 parcels that were owned by IU Health, and they house the New Hope shelter operations. 4 different facilities on these parcels. They're all on 2nd Street. And we closed on the 19th. It went fairly smoothly, and there was no exchange of funds because they are part of the overall transaction under the agreement with IU Health for purchase. So they have existing leases, and we assumed those leases from IU Health. And we are in the process of negotiating an extension to those leases. New Hope is in the process of contracting with a developer or a construction company to build them a new home that would house all of their operations, but it's not ready yet, so they can't move yet. And they also have a daycare, which limits how quickly they can move even into alternate space while they're waiting for their new building, because they are licensed by the state, daycare centers, and you can't just move to a new location and move your daycare there. You have to get the new location licensed, and that would take time as well. So we are trying to figure out how to structure the extensions, and we hope to do that in the next month. We are looking at some period between now and next June with options to extend, and we will see what they think of that. They've already been discussed, the possible terms. So we don't want to, we've committed to not, evicting them as much as we can, but we don't want to tie our hands if we can actually start developing, in late 2021, early 2022. So that's what the process is. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? for any of this resolution? Hang on, where are we at? Are we still on 20-91, folks? We are, aren't we?
We just gave you a lot of information about next steps, and I apologize if that was overwhelming, but it was intended to try to give you a pretty good snapshot of where we are concluding the year 2020 and what we see coming next.
Yeah, yeah. Any questions, commissioners, on resolution 20-91? And you can stretch a little bit. You can stretch out if you want, or get a drink or something. I'm teasing.
Yeah, Don?
Yeah.
I guess we want to stay focused on the core building question, but having given us all this other information, I'm just curious, will the financial analysis and potential property management contract that we talked about earlier this evening, will those give us insight on these properties on the east side of Rogers as well? That is the various fiscal questions that are involved with the property aggregation and looking at the potential pluses and minuses of those kinds of investments. Is that part of the contractual work that we'll be getting?
Yes, we should have been specific to say that arrangement covers all 24 acres that the city will be acquiring.
Thanks. In terms of the other, the meat of the motion, I applaud the city for preserving the core building. It is Bloomington Hospital. It is Bloomington. It is, I think, an essential reminder of our past, and I think it is also a feasible, developable building that can link the history of this site with the future of it. Thank you.
Can someone speak to on the core building? You know, there's many public meetings, et cetera, and I think my understanding was there was a broad base of community support to retain the core building. Can anybody speak to that?
Sure, and actually, Josh, you want to jump in? I see you put your picture up on the screen. Josh, in his duties with CORE as a subconsultant to SOM, was in charge of a lot of those discussions that were held. So Josh, why don't you jump in and I'll augment anything you say.
Sure. There was a decent amount of expressed interest, certainly in conducting adequate due diligence for what it would take to preserve the building and possibly change it into an alternate use, whether that be commercial, residential. But I think just the prevailing sentiment was it was appreciated in the context of its historical importance, and it also has some green space in front of it. So as an anchor point to the master plan, it certainly has been factored in to that extent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any questions from the public in regards to resolution 20-91? Okay.
If I make a public comment?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Richard Lewis. I'm a resident of the Prospect Hill neighborhood, a couple of blocks away from the hospital site. And I've also attended a lot of Hopewell Group community meetings and as well the hospital site reuse committee meetings. I want to thank the city and staff for being so diligent to explore the options for reuse for the core building, to look at the possibilities of micro unit rentals and that sort of development with these outside developers. I fully support retaining the core building as an historical element, but not just for that purpose. But it is a good reminder that since 1904, that site has been a site of healing, a place of healing for our community. And I think it's, as we look for ways to renew that site, it's important to keep in mind what that has meant to our community up to this point. And I think as far as historical architecture, with the Hunter School on sort of the northwest corner of this site and the core building at close to the southeast corner at First and Rogers, I think they can serve as great historical and interesting architectural bookends to the site. And obviously, with the possibilities for reuse. I think that could be very exciting. And again, I appreciate the city's diligence in looking into those options and city staff's recommendation to retain it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a question? Or that was just a okay.
Just comment, sorry.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Hey, BEDC. Jen, how are you doing?
Doing well. Good to see everyone.
You too.
And thank you so much for the presentation and all the information. I sat on the advisory committee and we took a tour of the core building pre-pandemic, which now feels like 10 years ago. And one of the things that was noted as we were walking through it, and it's a beautiful building, the construction, it's very thick concrete walls. And so from what I understood is that it's very difficult to move walls or adapt internally, you know, without doing a fair amount of other work. And I was wondering if anyone could speak to that, as well as any costs that would bring, or, you know, how that would factor into the plans for the building.
This is David Walter. During our discussions, I was on the city website, and there's a study that was done by RC engineers that addresses the building envelope as well as structure. And it's a very good study, which I expect from this company. They do outline costs of what happens when we tear off the existing building. I think they're estimating about $500,000 that needs to be put into taking care of the exterior facade when it's open to view, and also indicate that a new roof is necessary. Windows are about 30 years old. There's quite a bit in this study, so that's where I would refer to going back in there. One thing that they did say in their study is they're unable to find any original structural drawings of this building. They did observe steel framing and bar joists, which would indicate that, yeah, it may be a little bit more flexible to move things around interior than what we think. So that's my only comments there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're not going to be voting on this, but if you have any more questions, developers, or not developers, I'm sorry, commissioners have any more questions, have at it, and then we're going to move on to 20-92.
Don, this is actually a resolution because we'll need to approve our formal written recommendation.
Yeah, it is. It is, man.
Thank you.
Okay. Should have gotten some coffee. All right. So we don't have any questions. If not, we don't have any questions. Let's hear a resolution.
I move approval of resolution 20-91.
This is David Walter. I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canardi, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
All opposed, none. So the motion does carry. Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks with a bit more information than tonight, and for final consideration of these items. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business is resolution 20-92, approval of lease offering sheets for 4th Street Garage and Trades District Garage commercial / office space.
So this is the statutory step that's necessary for the RDC to be able to offer any property potentially for lease at all. It's the same as it is as though we were selling property. In this case, we have developed potential commercial and office space inside both the 4th Street and Trades District Garage. These are the offering sheets that would be published. We would leave these offers open until February 1st. which at a meeting of the RDC at February 1st at 5 o'clock will open any offers that are received. Those offers have to meet the price on the offering sheet. Otherwise, we have to hold them for 30 days and then we're free to negotiate with anyone possible. This doesn't limit in any way who may be tenants in those garages, just to be clear. It could be commercial, could be a retail, could be a restaurant, could also be other governmental entities or nonprofits. It is open to everybody, and that's not a done deal about who would occupy these. But this is just a necessary step as these garages go up and you see the progress on them. This is just the right time to open those up for potential offers. And I will note that this does come with an approval from the 444 account, which is your administrative account, of $1,000. That's just, I don't expect that we're going to spend that much, but there's a few $100s to put these in the Herald Times pursuant to Indiana law for the public notice. So I think last time it was around $400 for one of these notices. So two of them we estimate to be around $800-ish, but we gave ourselves a little bit of room just in case they've adjusted their rates since the last time we've done this.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions in regards to this?
My question is a little not on this, but I thought these were already spoken for. Because I remember when this came to Plan Commission, there was talk about things that are already going to be going in. So, or is that just not true anymore?
That's not true. The only parts that are partially true about that is that there is a plan for the city's going to occupy part of these spaces. So you can see in the diagram, the part that's not being offered, there is going to be city parking that'll go into the 4th Street garage. I believe city IT is going to occupy a portion of the trades district garage office space. Those are the only parts that aren't being offered for lease. But there are no tenants that are done deals. That was incorrect. I know that information was floating out there, but that was not accurate.
Okay. Thanks, Larry.
Any other questions in regards to the resolution 20-92? I'm going to open it up to the public. Does the public have any questions in regards?
Don, there's a question waiting for you in the chat.
Thank you. What do we got? Does the city's parking division have to put in a bid for 4th Street space? We just talked about this, didn't we?
That's right. Yeah. So they will not have to put in a bid. That is part of the space that we have dedicated for their purposes. And one of the reasons why we did that, as opposed to treating it like a wholly separate entity, is because that would essentially be if they were paying rent or something like that in the 4th Street garage, that would take money from one city pot and just move it around to another into a more limited or restricted fund. That didn't really make any sense for us, so that we've dedicated that spot. We also anticipated dedicating some of that spot in the bonding process and kind of made that clear that there would always be some part of a public purpose used in these office spaces. So I think that's what parking is occupying in that office space, but they would not have to put in a bid.
Okay. Thank you, B Square Beacon, and thank you, Larry. Any other questions from the public? Okay. Do we have a motion?
This is David Walter. I would make a motion we accept resolution 20-92.
Cindy Canarney seconds.
All those in favor, aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
All opposed, none. The motion does carry. Next item of business is resolution 20-93, approval of addendum to agreement with BCA Environmental Consultants, LLC, for a phase 2 environmental site assessment on 413 West 2nd Street. Who wants to speak in regards to this resolution?
I can jump in. Alex Frelli, Economic and Sustainable Development. So if you recall from a previous meeting, we are tentatively moving forward with a potential acquisition of the lot at the corner of Rogers and 2nd Street. That lot has some known potential historical challenges when it comes to the environmentals. And so as part of the agreement that you all forwarded several weeks ago, we have a due diligence period during which we are running an analysis of the lot. Phase 1 is complete, and BCA Environmental is proposing a phase 2 analysis of the environmentals. And we are accepting that recommendation, would like to pursue that phase 2 to understand exactly what environmental impacts we would be dealing with on the lot. So this is a proposal for that phase 2 environmental analysis. And we are working within a fairly aggressive due diligence timeframe. So it is our hope that we can keep moving on this with the anticipation that we have results by January's meetings.
Okay. Any questions in regards to resolution 20-93, folks? Commissioners? Was that Nick? Nick, were you motioning or you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Public, any questions in regards to resolution 20-93? None. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Cindy Canarney moves approval of resolution 20-93.
David Walter will second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, aye.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed, so the motion does carry. The last item of business is resolution 20-93. Amendment to lease agreement with Grant Properties at 216 South College Avenue. Is there anyone present that wants or needs to speak briefly to this resolution? And you know what? Before we go, everyone can have a sigh of relief or cheer because this is our last one. If you want, it's fine. Okay, I'm teasing. Go ahead, Larry. I'm ready, man.
Okay. This is just a really brief lease agreement. It's just a modification to one of the lease agreements that we took over whenever we purchased the College Square. You purchased the Redevelopment Commission purchased the College Square building. In this case, it's just changing the formal name of Grant Properties. They were a DBA as Grant Properties, but they have about a year ago, I think that they had formally reorganized and listed their name as Grant Management LLC. So we're modifying the lease to reflect that change and to update the notice information on the lease. Nothing else in the lease changes. No other terms would change.
I'm going to go to the public first on this one. Any questions in regards to resolution 20-94 from the public? Okay. Any questions in regards to resolution 20-94 from the redevelopment commissioners? All right. Can we have a motion? A resolution, I'm sorry.
This is
motion.
Eric Sandweiss, DBA C. Sandwa, recommending approval of 20-94.
Cindy Canarney seconds.
All those in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
All opposed? None. So the motion does carry. Any business or general discussion that anyone wants to bring about? No?
I don't think we have anything else for you. If you want to do the sigh of relief now, I think it's appropriate.
Oh, it's appropriate. It's appropriate now, huh? Okay. All right. Fantastic. Meeting is adjourned.